Hey guys, it's Eddie and today I am back with another movie review for you all. Now today's movie that I'm going to be reviewing I watched yesterday actually, and it is of course The Witch, directed by Robert Eggers, and it is a very fresh new horror movie on the scene. It was released sort of 2015, 2016, and so it's new, it's exciting, and I've seen it sort of floating around the stratosphere. But I've really wanted to see it for ages, and finally I have. I was really excited to see it because I watched the trailer and on YouTube, and I found it, really intriguing. It was seemed right up my alley, so I was really excited to watch it, and now I thought I would review it for you guys. So without further ado, let's get reviewing. So this film centers around the sort of lives of a sort of Puritan family in the 17th century as they sort of move out of their village. Their religion is not really tolerated or accepted anymore, so they decide to move out and enter the wilderness to make their own sort of life for themselves, to not feel persecuted anymore. And the film stars Anya Taylor-Joy as the daughter Thomasin. We've got Ralph Ineson as the dad, Kate Dickie as the mum, and there's also 4 other children. So, quite a big family, and they sort of move into the wilderness, and it all seems, it seems quite a daunting prospect, but nothing too sinister just yet. That is until Thomasin, the daughter, is outside playing with the youngest child, Samuel, the little baby, and she's playing a game with him when she closes her eyes and goes, boo, he's gone. He's nowhere to be seen. And with that, we are sort of transported into the woods, where we are introduced to this witch who is sadly using poor Samuel for her own witchy ends, shall we say. Now I thought this film, I'm not going to tell you any more of that, but I thought this film was a really refreshing and different horror. And the thing is, I didn't really feel scared throughout the movie. There were some parts, especially when we saw this mysterious witch in the woods that is causing this family so much trouble, and does so throughout the movie. I was like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen here? But it didn't leave me feeling truly terrified, and I was okay with that. But there were some moments that made me truly uncomfortable. For example, there is a moment where the oldest son, Caleb, becomes sort of cursed by the witch, and it's sort of watching him sort of writhe in pain, vomit up sort of rotten apples. It's very uncomfortable to watch, and you kind of feel like, you want to turn away and not see this anymore because this family is falling apart. And it's quite a sad and unsightly thing to see. But there is great acting, I think, especially from the parents, from Ralph Ineson and Kate Dickie, who, they're watching their children sort of either perish or fall into sort of the degenerate boundaries of witchcraft, or what they presume to be anyway, because they sort of start to think that Thomasin is the witch, wrongly, but and you sort of see them unraveling. They become desperate, and they're sort of stuck between this compassion for their children and this inherent fear for God and the devil. And I think it is great acting. I love the fact that it sort of stays true, if you will, to history. As a person who studies history at university, like, a part of me sort of geeked out of that part, because they keep the language there, they keep the sort of 17th century mannerisms there. I thought the clothing was great, very basic, very, sort of low-rung peasant, it all just seemed more accurate than historical period films that I have seen before, and it's nice to see. The problem with this film, perhaps for some people who want a little bit more of a thrill, is that it's sort of very slow. There's a very large build-up, and I didn't mind that. I still felt that it was gripping. It still got me. I still wanted to find out what was going to happen to this family, because it was pretty scary what was happening to them. Not in an obvious way, but the fact that they were slowly deteriorating and that they were falling apart was really unnerving. I think unnerving is the perfect word for this film. And I felt anyway that I really wanted to see the horrors that befall this family, and boy do they. You know, you're not sort of disappointed, because even though perhaps it's not there in a jump scare, or, you know, it's not there in, you know, some really creepy, obvious horror that we tend to get overchurned and sort of milked really a little bit these days, it's still satisfying, which is something that I loved. And I think one of the great qualities about this film, which is really different, is actually the really sinister symbol of the family goat, Black Phillip. It's so clever that they chose to include this, because he's sort of present throughout the film, and there are suspicions about this sort of goat, which is obviously, you know, a symbol of Satanism and witchcraft. And you have these suspicions, but even so, that big reveal at the end is so shocking, and you're really satisfied by it. And it's sort of really creepy and sinister, and I love it. I thought it was a brilliant touch. I thought it was a brilliant quality of the movie, and it was, you know, pretty creepy. Another thing about this film, I think you see everything on face value. Within the first half an hour, we actually see the witch. Nothing is really left sort of, you know, it's not like the Blair Witch Project where we don't see the witch in the woods. We see her pretty clearly. I think that's what makes this film so different. It may have sort of detracted from its obvious scare value, but nevertheless, I thought the undertones that it left were really sort of creepy and, you know, unnerving. It also had a very interesting twist ending. I wasn't expecting it. I thought it was very different, and I think it just added to the fact that this was such a different film to all the horrors that we've seen lately. And I thought it was clever. Especially since, which I think is fantastic, by the way, the fact that Robert Eggers, who also wrote the film as well as directed it, decided to write it based on 17th century written accounts about witchcraft from the time, which just makes the film seem even more creepy. And if you think about that, rather than, you know, expecting some, you know, jump scares that'll make you sort of blanch violently and, you know, shoot your pants a little bit, then, you know, you're gonna find a more creepy undertone, I think, and I think it does definitely stay with you. So with that said, I think I would definitely give this film 4 out of 5 stars if I had to give it a rating. I thought it was different, I thought it was fresh. I think we need something different for the horror genre, which I'm such a huge fan of. I do like to see nowadays, rather than the sort of bland jump scare horror, something that is really innovative and exciting. And I thought, despite the slow start and despite the sort of heavy reliance on dialogue and the build-up, that this film really did that. And I will say that there is violence. You know, you should expect that from a horror film. I think there is violence, and it is a film that will really truly make you feel uncomfortable. I think it definitely did with me. But that's just my opinion, so maybe just go into that with a little bit of warning. If you're a horror fan, it might not be for you, but I will tell you that I think if you're not a huge horror fan, I think it's a good one to sort of edge you in, because if you're scared of jump scares and all of that kind of stuff, that's not a problem in this film. I think this is a really sort of classy, interesting, well made, well thought out horror film, brilliantly written and directed by Robert Eggers, and I loved it. I loved it. So I'd advise anyone to see this film. But if you are not a fan of that kind of stuff, violence and blood and gore, then maybe treat it with caution. But I still think it's worth the watch. So that, therefore, is my take on The Witch. By the way it's written, the double V, I know it's an early modern spelling, but it does always want to make me say the Vvitch, and that's I'm finding that difficult. But anyway, yeah, that's my take on this movie. I hope you guys enjoyed this review, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Remember, if you have any movie suggestions for me to review, then leave a comment below or message me on my Tumblr. I will be glad to take you up on the offer. So with that, I will sign off and hope to see you in the next one. Bye!